real conversations, and some hard truths. Gangs, drugs, and guns. Giving a voice to those willing to sacrifice. We have stories that need to be told. We have lessons that need to be taught. Protect and serve. Welcome to The Quiet Professional. Hey everybody, welcome back. Nathan Rome is with you. Today, we are going to have an excellent discussion on municipal politics and community safety. For that, I have Councillor Michael Janz on the show. He is a councillor with the City of Edmonton. Prior to being elected to City Council, he served 3 terms in several roles with the Edmonton Public School Board. He has extensive background in neighborhood and community development and is the marketing director of the Edmonton Federation of Community Leagues. So welcome, Councillor.
I missed the is. I was the marketing director.
Okay. No worries. All right, do you have any other titles right now?
No, that's great. Just city councillor. City councillor is my full-time job. Yeah.
Perfect. No, we'll get into talking about you just to start. It's kind of where we start with most of the guests, just so people get to know you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and maybe how you got into municipal politics.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show, and I appreciate the chance to chat. I was a Vancouver baby who grew up in rural Alberta. I did K-12 in a town called Strathmore outside of Calgary, and then I came up to Edmonton and the University of Alberta in 2002, 2003. I was raised in a rural Alberta household that was, I would say, a very heavily influenced by social justice Christianity. My mom is from South Africa, and she left South Africa in the 70s. She wasn't a fan of apartheid. And when her and my dad met, they knew that if they moved to South Africa, my dad would have had to do military service there, which he, not only was he a pacifist, but they also didn't support the regime and didn't support the direction of the government. So when I think about who I am and my values and my story, definitely while I'm not a person of faith anymore, the Christianity is definitely a part of that in my upbringing and that sense of social justice and care and love. And as well, I would say the suspicion of government and authority and the need for checks and balances definitely because of my mom's apartheid experience had a big role in me. I remember hearing stories from an uncle who he left South Africa. He was a doctor because the security service was asking them to basically produce false reports in the emergency room after an incident involving protesters. So, growing up with that sort of like trust but verify, checks and balances, question authority, especially those who can use force, it was a big part of my upbringing. I was a rural Alberta kid I was in grade 12 when 9/11 happened. I was actually an Army reservist at the time. I thought I was going to go to military college and pursue a direction there. But I think like a lot of people my age, post 9/11, watching sort of the wars that happened, the corporate control over trying to get more oil and resources and everything else. I mean, it was a very disillusioning time, I would say. I think you remember the Green Day album and punk rock and all of that. So I ended up coming up to Edmonton, taking a leave from the Army and getting into the public education. I was at the U of A, did an undergrad in history and then a master's in education policy studies. I ended up working for all the neighborhoods around the city, building neighborhood programs and helping strengthen community that way. And then the last 5 years before going to City Council, I worked for Big Brothers Big Sisters of Canada through a mentoring initiative where I was building youth mentoring programs across the country.
Okay.
And I love Edmonton. I've lived in lots of different neighborhoods in Edmonton. I've lived in like the poshest Southwest neighborhoods in a small apartment, and I've lived in like the sketchiest inner city neighborhoods of Edmonton as well too. I don't want to give the impression I'm sort of someone who's been isolated from the police. I would venture I've called the police more than anyone on your podcast because of life experiences. I can give you an example. When I lived in Chinatown, Macaulay, I was on the 3rd floor of an apartment building, great apartment in a sketchy area, and it was fine until a drug dealer moved into the 2nd floor. And we called SCAN, we called the hot
Hmm.
initially we kind of told him to mind his own business and do his deals in the alley. But no, he was bringing people into the building and it got sketchier and sketchier. One day there was a big fight and there was blood on the walls. Like I was finding people who had overdosed in the garage, and push came to shove. I got all the neighbors together and we went to the landlord and said, either he's gone or we're not paying rent anymore. So we organized a rent strike. And sure enough, within 3 days, the guy was evicted. Like it, and that was an example of, I think community has a role to play in safety as well too. It can't just be, put on the police. And I'm sure we'll
Hmm.
talk about that there. But I have a level of learning. I had a chance to go on a ride along with you recently. I've done ride alongs with deputy superintendents on transit. When I was working for all the neighborhoods around the city, I did the Citizens Police Academy program, which for listeners, if they don't know about it, it's like a 10-week program where you, for 3 hours a night or 3 hours once a week, you get together with the service and learn about all the different elements of what the police do. And it's really educational, and it provides citizens a better way to, like when I was at my neighborhood job and people had questions about who to call or what to do, or, I had resources then to provide them. So
Yeah.
yeah, I have great conversations with many Edmonton Police Service members out on the streets, or well, just this past year, I've had to call the police 3 times in my own life. I'll get to that later on in the program too. But I always welcome opportunities like this to chat.
Very cool. Well, maybe when you start talking to other people and if you're introducing yourself, do you ever just stop when you say, like, I'm from rural Alberta and you get a certain response? But then when you talk about the rest of your life, they're like, oh, wow, I didn't expect all that. And growing up in rural Alberta, because that is quite the difference of what I guess people might have an expectation of you.
Oh yeah, no, there's an alternate timeline where some of the guys I joined the reserves halfway through grade 11 when I was 16 years old. And I thought I was going to military college because one of my best friends who was a year older than me, he took that path and I was kind of following him. And yeah, and then years later I remember opening the paper when I was when I was in Edmonton, and I remember seeing some of the guys I had joined up with were in Afghanistan and were in the paper for that. Like there's you never know where life will take you. And I think if you're a curious person who has a love of learning and yeah, I mean, it's you never know. So
Well, I was going to ask too, like with your parents leaving, so you leave or your mom leaves South Africa. Did she have any kind of reserves about you joining the military, or did she have like a different view of that or law enforcement in general?
it was interesting. She was okay with it because her father had been a veteran in World War II. He had
Mm.
there's actually incredible memoirs he had from he was fighting with the Transvaal Scottish, and they were chasing Rommel up through northern Africa, and he actually got overrun at one point and captured as a POW. And because he had a South African accent, which can sound German, they thought he was a spy, and they locked him up. And there, so he has all these wild stories. And apparently, I remember being told that he was in Italy where when they hung Mussolini in the street, and there's all these wild stories. So my mom was like okay with it because she thought, okay, well, he wants to be a medic. That's a Christian thing to do, on and on.
Okay.
Yeah, my dad, however, there was words. I joined when my dad was actually overseas in the Middle East. He was working in the United Emirates, and uh, well, I think they're happy I left. Put it this way, I think they're happy. I
Okay.
said I was gonna pursue civilian life. I think they were much more supportive.
So basically, they were okay with you being who's the character there in Hacksaw Ridge? Garfield, whatever his name is. They're okay with you doing that job.
Yeah, basically, if I was the wacky doctor from MASH, I think they were okay with that.
All right. So as you're growing up, do you have any are you kind of looking at politics throughout those years, or is it you're not 100% sure? And while you're going through that, do you have any particular influences? So outside of the family side, do you have any particular politicians or anyone else kind of leading you in a certain direction, kind of maybe has some effect on your thinking of how you view things?
Oh, 100%. I mean, being in a very social justice oriented church, I remember there was a civil war in Guatemala, and Guatemalan refugees were coming up to Canada, and this was in the 90s. And I remember our church had refugees come and speak at the pulpit and come and talk about what was happening there and the government oppression and everything going on there. I was raised in a very social justice household. I remember my mom showing us like Martin Luther King's march across the bridge and the police beating up the protesters. I remember and her like showing my brother and I, and we were way too young to, I think, like I remember us crying watching this, and like, and she was like, "Don't look away. This is the reality. This is the world we live in. Like, rights are hard earned, rights are fought." Like, I remember her showing us the movie Wilberforce, all about fighting to end slavery. I remember so many expectations that you shall help the poor, you shall fight for justice, you shall. The goal of life is not to accumulate money and riches, but it's actually service. And so it was not just in the media or the books or anything else. It was all around us in the examples that, as a parent now, like I think about that, my kids will listen to 10% of the words I say, but watch 90% of the things I do. And yeah, it was, it's you look back and you wonder, like, okay, what, like, there's never one incident or one thing. It's a culmination of all these little experiences.
Yeah. Well, how would you describe your style of politics? Is there a way to describe it?
I would say, like, first and foremost, I believe in a power analysis that power comes from the community. That politics is all about taking ideas and turning them into action. And if you want something, be it a new pool in your community, public healthcare in your province, if you want something, it must be gained and taken by getting people to come together and to advocate for that idea. Things are not just given. Rights are not just given. Rec centers or playgrounds or something are not just given. They must be fought for. So I believe very much in that. The fundamental job of any politician or any group or anyone is to organize. And I would say that also the going back to influences. I would say I was always raised that we are all political, whether you want to be or not. There's no staying neutral on a moving train. Like you are part of politics.
That's 100% true.
Yeah, you're part of politics by your inaction, not your action. If there's a bad thing happening around you and you say nothing, you're part of the bad thing.
Yeah. Well, so if you're growing up and you have like a suspicion of government, and I'll talk about the policing side of this, you can speak to the politician side. You have that suspicion of government. How do you get into government yourself? Because does it, people are going to ask, does it sound like you're just joining the club, kind of, right? Like, so, and maybe this kind of gets further into a discussion about, can you affect more change from outside or within?
Yeah.
So what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, great questions. I mean, one of the things that first comes to mind is like who benefits in any decision, who benefits. Like, I remember growing up and believing in like trickle down economics, that, if we just cut taxes, more wealth will flow to the communities, and then sort of seeing that wasn't the case, or seeing public companies cut, or seeing like public services cut, and then that money going to just enrich private profits while services declined. Or so I think in all decisions, asking always who profits, who benefits. And that, for me, like, my suspicions of government very quickly transferred to a suspicion of private interests. Like, why is it that one company can give money to a politician, and then that politician votes to give them money for a downtown arena, or for a bailout for their business, or this or that or the other? And just starting to really analyze, who is the system built for? Who can lobby the system? Who benefits from the system? Those are all sort of the questions that, yeah. So I mean, I remember being a young man at 18, excited about Stephen Harper because I was tired of all the liberal corruption. But then Harper got in, and there was all the same conservative corruption. And then, yeah, now, I would say I really appreciate what people like Bernie are doing in the United States, and that kind of a analysis of just saying, like, the system is broken, but who broke it, and who's benefiting from it, and who's getting payouts, and let's follow the money on all decisions.
Yeah. Well, and maybe in follow up to what you're saying there, just about like the arena, or kind of, we could talk just downtown Edmonton in general, or I guess we could even mention any downtown in any major city, because they all seem to kind of be working the same way. But if you get those people in who can do some of that lobbying, and they've got the billions of dollars, do they not bring also the benefits with it? So they bring in housing down there, they bring in the entertainment district, they revitalize the downtown, which I think is one of the goals of city council here as well as others. And this is a little bit in follow-up to the post you had today there about the McLean's article
Yeah,
with some of the wealthiest people. So I thought that was good timing. But, it's like, yeah, they have a lot of money and a lot of power, but they're also the ones who can bring in these benefits, I guess we'll call them.
for sure. And I guess you could say, like, if I'm a business person who takes a bunch of politicians to a hockey game, gets some playoff seats, and then I get an $80 million contract for pharmaceuticals or something. Hey, I'm creating jobs, right? I'm hiring people, right? Like, it's important to look through. Like, sure, like a company who builds a bridge is building a bridge, which is good for everyone. But shouldn't that company go through a fair process to get that bridge? Shouldn't they
Mm,
have to bid on it like everyone else? Like, it's about having a system of good governance and blind justice that doesn't matter who you gave donations to or who you gave money to, that you're being held accountable and that there's transparency there. That, I think, is the ultimate thing. And I think that's why when you look at, like, Quebec, when the mob was running construction for decades, that's why you had stuff breaking and things costing way too much.
yeah.
I like the line by Benjamin Franklin, like, sunshine is the best disinfectant. So
Yeah, well, no, and I can see your point on some of those. Do you think, I guess with the human element involved in everything, I don't know if we'll ever get away from that because there's always greed or corruption or different things involved. So, how would you actually solve some of those issues? Like, we can have bidding wars on things or put things to tender, but there's always a way to jump through hoops and get around a process.
And our job is to tighten those hoops. Our job is to always make sure that the process is better. Like, we'll never get rid of crime, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't stop trying to fight it, right?
Mm,
We'll never get rid of corruption, doesn't mean we should stop trying to fight it. I think it's constantly trying to learn from mistakes and to try and minimize harm as much as possible. I mean, I think you and I, in a way, face the same thing. Like, people hear about one bad cop and then they put that on you. People hear about one dirty politician and then they put that on me. Like, we
mhm.
both exist in this kind of parallel universe where bad politicians or bad cops disillusion politics. They disillusion politics. They disillusion policing. They disillusion everyone, and then it hurts trust.
Yeah.
And I think we need to build a society with trust. And the way to do that, to me, is having rigorous, impeachable process that we can stand behind. And I think that's what sets Canada apart from other nations in the world that have way, way more corruption.
Well, maybe I'll ask this here then, and this isn't a trick question or anything, but do you think, like, so when you put out some of the tweets about policing and the critiques of that from the political side, do you think, I don't know if the word to use is appropriate, but I'll ask, is it appropriate to do that? Because if we're talking about, well, one bad politician makes them all look bad, one bad cop makes them all look bad, what are your thoughts around, some of the critiques and criticisms that you've seen of the police side of things lately, or that you have yourself put out over the years?
Yeah.
And this kind of falls on a conversation we had offline before, along with the ride along. So if you want to kind of talk about that here.
Yeah, it's a tough one for sure, because I think we all want a system where every politician is impeachable, where every police officer is impeachable. And when we have a system where that doesn't happen, like, then that's a major problem. When you see people who are getting away with things, that undermines trust, whether they're politicians or police officers. I think, for instance, like we talked about, there's a situation where ACERT, the investigator in Alberta, the independent investigator, actually recommended charges against the police officer. And then it was the Crown prosecutor who decided not to press those charges. Now, why is that? That just undermines trust in the system. It creates this perception that some people are above the law and they can do whatever they want. So I think, like politicians and police, we must be held to a much, much higher standard. It's kind of like surgeons. If you're going to cut me open, I want to trust you. I want to know
Mm,
that you are being regulated. You're going through a college, through everything else. So I think that there's been a number of instances where politicians have misbehaved and have ended up in jail or faced consequences. And I think what we've seen lately is that that hasn't been the case with policing, and that's, I think, fueled some cynicism around some of these cases where it seems like some people are above the law, and you can like a recent traffic incident where if you get pulled over but you're a police officer, you can drive away and get away scot free without stopping. But yet, if anybody else did that, you might get some reprimand or something else.
mhm. Do you think, though, when sometimes those tweets and different things go out, that there's more behind the scenes that, for whatever reason, there could be a lot more going on behind the scenes, but just they're not given to the public?
Mm, I don't understand. Like if like I think if anything, this highlights why we need more transparency in the justice system, public hearings, etc. Like if this there was something going on behind the scenes, like this guy was an undercover cop and he was on a mission or something, well, fine. Like there must be ways to deal with that too, right? Like I
Yeah, like how to say that, right? And tell the public?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Like
okay.
I'm not talking about an officer who throws the lights on just to get through an intersection because they have a break coming up or something like that. I'm not that cynical. I'm not talking about that stuff. I'm talking about the big things where there could be corruption, there could be police officers connected to organized crime. Those are the things that we must hire with the absolute scrutiny as a society. I mean, no one in society is allowed to kill or to use violence except for police, right? So naturally, we should have the most rigorous accountability mechanisms for those individuals as well. Because ultimately, this is what protects good cops too. When I talk to other police officers, they're also quite cynical. There's a feeling of like I could complain about the bad cop, but what's the point? Nothing will happen. I know that person is doing bad things, but I could complain, but what's the point? Nothing's going to happen. All I'm going to do is put my own career on the line,
Hmm.
and it's easier for me just to head down, shut up, just do the reps, right?
Yeah, there's definitely that comes up in some instances. So just before we get fully into the law enforcement, which we kind of are getting on here, I do want to just stick with the politics side just for a little bit more. I kind of wanted to ask, what is your vision for the city? I see lots of tweets and different things about like bike lanes, or some people are talking about 15-minute cities. Like, is there like I don't know, an ultimate goal? Like, is there a master plan that says, if we can get all these things done, this is the shining example?
Absolutely. Yeah, we actually have a city plan for the city of Edmonton. Edmonton is one of the fastest growing cities in Canada. For your listeners who aren't here, we're at 1.1 million people. We've grown 5% per a year. I think for the last 4 years, we are booming. We thought we would get to 2 million people by 2050. It's looking now we're going to get to 2 million people by 2040. Edmonton's an
Wow.
incredible city to live, a great place to raise a family. It's got wonderful schools, great parks, a wonderful river valley. There's so much here that's amazing. I think for me, what's important is we're in a national housing crisis. We need to provide more housing choices. We have issues with clean air and clean water and traffic. So we need to offer more transportation choices. We need strong public services that will support people here. If you want to take your kids to the pool or the playground or something else,
Hmm.
we need to be safe. We need to be affordable. We need to make sure that everyone here can build a life and have a job, and it can be a relatively affordable place to live. I'm Yeah, those are some of my big like north stars, making sure that everyone has a home, and you can own a car and you can drive your car, but also you have choices if you don't want to do that.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about the taxes. So I live in Edmonton. I pay a lot of taxes. And I'm just wondering, like, so we have all these examples of like really good ideas of projects and different things. However, taxes go up every year and it seems like a huge margin. I'm wondering,
Do you know, Nathan? Do you know what the largest item is in the
I
tax?
know
And
we'll get there. But we'll get to that conversation. But I'm just wondering, like, even on the project side, is there anything where we're looking at it and going like, so safety security is a necessity, so we have to spend on it. Can we save money on it? 100% we could save money on that somehow, some way. But when we're talking about like bike lanes everywhere, or gondolas, or the funicular, for people who don't know what that is, it's like well, how would you describe it? An elevator that goes up and down through the river valley.
yeah, to allow people in wheelchairs or with walkers or mobility issues to get.
Yeah. But when we are talking about like all these different things, are we ever looking at anything and going like, okay, we can't actually afford that right now, and we're going to say no, and we'll spend money on the needs, not the wants?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, and I agree with you there. I mean, there was a decision to build a new $350 million rec center in West Edmonton called Lewis Farms. I voted against that. I thought it was the wrong time to do that. For me, we need to focus on things that save us time and money, things that make the city operate smoothly and efficiently. And for me, that's transportation investments, including bike lanes, including sidewalks, including multi-use paths, including public transit. The more, like, there's study after study that shows if you can, cars are one of the largest cost drivers in the city.
Mhm.
If you're able to offer people transportation choices, the cost of car ownership for one individual is about $15,000 a year. If you can make a family go from a two-car family to a one-car family, if you can help them make that choice, that's an extra 15 grand in your pocket. Now, it may not make a difference for you, but for a lot of families, that's a huge amount of change. If we can help young people at any given point in society, there's about 30% of people who can't drive for whatever reason. Either they're under 18, or they're seniors, or they have a disability or something else. So that 30%, that's a 30-year city. So think about how we build a city for them, and making sure that they have choices too is really important. There in Edmonton, we put investments towards bike lanes, but we put 18 times as much. We put $1.8 billion towards roads. 18 or 180. My math is slipping right now. But yeah, in the same period, we spent 100 million on bike lanes. We're spending $1.8 billion on roads. And if you expand that a little further, it's up to 4.2 billion. But every time people are biking, there's less wear and tear on the roads. It's clean air, it's health, it's exercise, it's recreation. It's just like sidewalks. They're not a must to have. Or nice to have. They're a must have. It's part of building a safe city that offers people transportation choices to move around. Same with LRT. It sounds expensive up front, like spending $1 billion on a train. But when you compare that to the cost of twinning a road or adding more infrastructure, I mean, just one overpass on 50th Street, that was 180 million to go over the train line. Like, these road infrastructure projects are enormous. Bridges are enormous, and cars cause incredible wear and tear on our roads. We're a northern climate. We get way more potholes. We get way more freeze thaw cycles. And even, let's say, even if we could mitigate those things, where are we going to park all the cars? If we're a city of 2 million people, we cannot be a city of 2 million cars. We don't have that much space for parking lots and for traffic jams and for everything else. The cost of widening or doubling, say, something like the high level bridge, or what are we going to do? Add 2 more lanes to the Henday? All that does is just create more traffic, right? So it's about offering people choices, especially, like, I'm a parent, you're a parent. I don't want to have to be chauffeuring my kids all over Hell's Half Acre. I want to be able to let them bike to school safely, or let them bike to the library, stuff like that. So that's really, really important to me.
Do you think, like, just as the city grows and we kind of move into the future, things change, like technology or what have you? Maybe just some of those things, like, it used to be nice to bike to school, but maybe that's not a thing that can be possible in the future. Like, I don't know. I'm just wondering, like, do we see things now where it's like, it's more nostalgia and we're just like, well, maybe that isn't part of the future?
They've been promising me a hovercraft for what, 50 years? I think.
Flying cars.
I mean, if you look at other cities like Paris and New York and London and others, they're moving towards more public transit, more cycling, more walking, more people-focused centers. I mean, gas is expensive. Car ownership is expensive. We pay the highest auto insurance anywhere in Canada. If you're a young man, I was talking to one guy, he was 18, clean driving record, paying $300 a month in insurance on his car. That's wild.
Yeah.
We got to offer people choices.
Yeah, I think, I don't disagree offering choices. I think when it comes to a lot of the vehicle stuff, and I think it's hard to put a price on the freedom that it offers. So I think that will always be something that people complain about. What they want, more roads, or they want more lanes, whatever it might be. I think that'll still always be kind of like the number one thing that they talk about.
But it's a myth, though, Nathan, because your freedom to drive is only possible when I don't exercise my freedom to drive. Your freedom to park is only possible when I don't exercise my freedom to park. If you and all of your neighbors, all 500 of you, exercise your freedom to drive at the exact same time, guess what happens? You're not getting onto Ellerslie, or sorry, I don't mean to dox. You know what I mean? Like, here, let me say.
Don't worry, people are free to come to my house.
Yeah, I live in Bum. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like, people think cars are freedom, but really they're a massive expense. They're only if you can afford it, only if you and your neighbors can't. And let's remember, if you want to talk about death and safety, 24 people were killed in motor vehicle collisions, crashes, etc. in 2024 or 2023 rather. 8 motorcyclists died this summer. That's more than the number of murders we've had in our city thus far. Like, if we want to talk about safety, the most dangerous thing we do every single day is get behind the wheel.
Yeah. You know, and well, a lot of that too, though, is people taking on risk themselves and making bad choices. But I get what you're saying too, is like,
Let's unpack that a bit. Like, because I think of like,
yeah,
there's a woman, a senior, who fell in the Millwoods parking lot. She got run over by a Hummer and killed.
mm,
Like, how did she take on that risk? There was a 3-year-old killed in a marked crosswalk, walking across the street with his mom. A joyriding truck came ripping around the corner, hit him and his mom. The kid's dead. Like, how did he take? There's like still all of these. Like, there's all these examples where we create bigger and bigger vehicles that are more and more dangerous. You may feel safer inside in the driver's seat, but everyone around you now is more likely to die. And if you hit someone, they're more likely to get pulled under and die than on an old Honda Civic where you'd bounce off the roof. It's and people are reckless as crap, and we allow cars to sell basically a full iPad on the dashboard with all the wing dings to distract you to shit too. So we I think we as society are playing with fire here, and we need to if we're serious about building a safer community for everyone, we got to rein in the excesses of car culture.
yeah. Well, and I was going to finish my point by saying, even though there's you take on the risk by driving yourself, but you can't control the risk that others create. So
Yeah.
yes, when you go out and you're driving your vehicle, you could be the greatest driver in the world, but I can't control the hundreds of other cars by me that are terrible. Also, why I think it should be way harder to get a driver's license, and maybe they need to centralize that.
100%. Other countries have that. It's way harder. I mean, just on the ride along, how many times did we pull over a driver for doing some wacky thing? Like four or five times, right? Like
Mhm.
the guy speeding past us, the guy doing the illegal U-turn, the guy street racing. Like, it's just it's incredible how reckless people are.
Maybe with that, we'll get into talking a bit about the law enforcement side. I want to ask about the ride along. So feel free, tell me the positives, the negatives, and just kind of if you want to tell people like what you saw out there and what you thought of the overall experience. So, sorry, I'll lay the groundwork a little bit more. So you came out with the gang suppression team in particular. So with the team that I work with. So go ahead, just talk about the experience.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like I think you invited me, I think 6 times, and I kept saying no. I kept saying no, I'm not going. I want to see reports and data and statistics. I want to see a spreadsheet. Don't give me anecdotes. I want data, right? And I
Mhm.
was being quite stubborn about it. And eventually, you said, "Come on, just go." And yeah, I did, and I'm really glad I did. I actually, like, compliments to the team. They were all very kind to me and welcoming, and answered all my questions until 3 in the morning. Yeah, it was very very interesting. I think there's where to begin. Like, there's so much. It's interesting to me. Like, we were having a conversation about, well, look at the return on investment this team is providing. Look at what we are generating. We're putting up the stats. We're getting the bus. We're getting the guns. We're getting all of this, all of these bad actors out of the system. And that was really really helpful to hear and to see. But then in my head, I'm quickly going back and saying, okay, well, this team, and I think you have 16 members.
We have between the two teams at any given time because someone's always off or something happened. But we have like 4 to 6 members and then a sergeant.
And in my head, I'm thinking about, okay, the Edmonton Police Service has 20 communications people. They spend money on public relations. They have these contracts for different things. I'm thinking in my head, why is the police choosing to spend on people on Twitter or TikTok instead of spending on a team like yours? So for me, it's always about resourcing, priorities, and choices. Of course, there's all those anecdotes of it. I remember driving around, and it was like, man, if I was I think we were talking about, if I was a criminal and I was trying to like fly below the radar, the first thing I wouldn't do would be buy a totally blinged out Range Rover. But yes, they do. If I was a criminal who was trying to, break bad, I would open up a Gustavo's fried chicken restaurant. I wouldn't be out there doing bottle service at the nightclubs, acting like a baller.
Yeah.
It's interesting, like how many people do tell on themselves, and also how yeah, like the a couple of the other things that really stuck with me is like I don't know if you remember, there was a car, I think it was a drunk driver. basically the team had to sit, like two of the patrol guys then had to sit on that car for, it could be the rest of the night
Mhm.
until a tow truck came to get it. Well, there's two officers out of commission now for the rest of the shift. That's wild. Why do we not have some other solution that could have somebody else sit on the car and have those officers back on the street doing their job? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we're talking about how much paperwork there is, how much extra administrative work, and it's like, well, what if you had an EA? What if you had a paralegal? What if you had somebody else to help you with all of that? There's things like that just in about the operations that I thought were really, really interesting. And yeah, I'm glad I did it. I also did a transit ride along with one of the deputy chiefs, which was also really interesting because I remember grilling him because my ward has a number of the transit stations in it, and I was saying, so where,
Mhm.
like, if you're telling me that there's more crime on the train, where are the cops? Why are you not dispatching members to the train? And I remember him telling me, look, like the kind of crime you have on the train, you don't need our guys for it. You can handle internally to the city with transit peace officers, with crisis diversion, with other stuff. We need to be able to have the bodies to go and deal with the much higher risk and higher priority calls. We don't need to be here on the train. We can have other people do it. So
Okay.
I think it's that constant tension. I can't remember if I told you my wife recently got credit card frauded,
Mhm.
and they sent a uniformed armed member in a patrol car over to our house to collect a statement from her. Like, why is that necessary? How is it I can basically get a mortgage online and I can do all kinds of work,
Yeah.
yet I can't sign a credit card thing? I can get married by a commissioner of oath, the most financially risky decision I've made in my entire life. Yet I can't
Give a
sign
statement. Yeah.
yeah, like, and I think I told you there was another just this year. My building got broken into, and I was helping get the security cam footage to the patrol members responding. Well, they had to come back the next day because they didn't have like a USB key or like an appropriate thing. Like why we couldn't just upload the video file and email it to them or something, or a Google Drive or something. Like there's all these little things where it feels like we're running like a 18th century police force in a 21st century world, where there's a lot more I think we could be doing, just to make things smoother and better for everyone.
And in my experience, so I've obviously I got friends that are in different police services right across Canada. I worked with the RCMP before coming to the EPS, and Edmonton is like head and shoulders above a lot of other services in all those things you're talking about. So just
Well,
imagine.
that's terrifying.
Well,
That's
that's the
terrifying,
thing,
man.
though, right? And I guess that comes back down to is like, okay, yeah. So talking about where are we spending the money and what are we doing with it? How efficient and effective are we being in that capacity? With when we talk about like just back on the ride along with us, one of the things that I think we were really stressing too was like the proactive side of policing that we do, because this is where we get, I'd say, probably the majority of our complaints from. But it's talking about, like you were saying, you know, the portrayal, the image that people project out there. So when we go out, people think profiling's a dirty word, but it's like, I'm looking at the behavior and the way someone carries themselves and how they want to project their image and that environment you create by doing that. That's the stuff that we have to go off of. So I was just wondering, kind of, what are your thoughts around like maybe the proactive side, if you had any kind of on that?
Well, it's interesting. I would say the profiling that I experienced with you was profiling of automobiles and profiling of, hey, that's strange. You tinted all of your windows. Let's have a chat. Or like, weird. This car is worth more than my house. Let's have a chat. That, like, it was some of those instances where and I should clarify for the listeners, we weren't just randomly pulling people over. You were running the plates of people looking for. I don't know how much I can say on the about the ride along, but
Oh, you're
I don't
fine.
want to give the impression you were just pulling people over because they drove a nice car. Like it was, okay, hang on a minute. What are you doing here? Like this seems out of place or something, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's a part of it. Uh, but in general, like I would say this, like this goes back to another conversation we had about intelligence and collecting intelligence and how that's done and what needs to be done and what the priorities are. And you would, as we're driving around, we would hear, oh, okay, there's this call coming in or that call coming in. And um I think of some people say, well, why didn't the police, they email my office, why didn't the police come to my house when I called? And it's like, well, maybe because they were in the two of the patrol units where two of the patrol members were sitting in the hospital with somebody who got Form 10. Maybe 8 of the patrol units were over at an instance where somebody was suicidal. Maybe other members were out here at this thing. And it goes back to something I always say is like, I want the right tool for the right time at the right place. It's that idea of cost, conduct, detasking. Like, what do we have to do? Like in my mind, and when I talk to members, they share the same sentiment. I became a police officer not to go in round up people with shopping carts in the alleyway. I became a police officer to catch bank robbers. Like, have we solved all the murders yet? Have we stopped all the bank robbers yet? Like, have we, like, going back to what are we actually as a society? What should be our number one priority? And that's violent crime.
Yeah.
How do we keep people safe? And yet, when you look at the majority of calls that members go to or deal with, it's not that. So what do we have to do to make it that? Who do we have to get engaged into this process? Whether it's through prevention and investments in the early years or whatever, working with kiddos, whatever, or is it something else like literally having EPS paralegals? And I can't remember the name of it, but I think the Edmonton Police Service is working on a program like this to have kind of administrative assistance assigned to some police to help them, which ultimately I think will save everyone time and money. And it's just wild. I mean, I thought if I got in a bar fight and got arrested, I would be taken to jail and would stay in jail. The reality is, no, you might get arrested, you might get charged, you might get a slip, but you don't actually go to jail.
Yeah.
Like, you get sent home. Okay. And I thought if people go to jail, they come out of jail and they've got, they've been re-educated or given some work or given something. No, they come out of jail and they get dumped on the streets of Edmonton. Like, the system is so systemically screwed up that it's sort of everything surrounding the whole justice system in Canada needs a rethink.
Yeah, it definitely isn't a job for one person. But I think if we take it as, if we're going to talk about education and health and justice, we need a few really good people, at least in each one of those streams, kind of working toward the same goal. And you kind of touched on what I was going to talk about next, was just the purpose of police and where they fit within the community. So brought up like dealing with violence, right? Police are the ones equipped to go deal with that. And we had a good discussion about this when we did the ride along. What's your vision for, like, where do police belong? Is it strictly just call me when there's weapons involved or someone's getting punched in the face type deal? Or do they belong in the spaces of harm reduction or helping people before it becomes a full-blown fight? Like, where would you be putting them if you had your way?
Well, I think we'll never be able to, as a society, like, if we were to put a police officer on every corner, we'd be bankrupt. If we were to put a police officer in every bar, we'd be bankrupt. I think we need to, there's a sense of, okay, well, what is it that the police can do and only the police can do? What is it that other organizations can do? Like, I believe in looking at community safety holistically. And by the time we've called the police, by the time the police are involved, we've already failed. It's like the fire department. By the time the fire department is there, we've already failed. We should be investing in sprinklers, prevention, alarms, building materials. We should have regulations on construction, stuff like that. Like, I do believe that I want the police to be focused on the violent crime, on murders, on investigative matters, on fraud, on those big items that do require a police presence. We've made as a city in Edmonton since my election, we've given 20% more money to the police service. The police service has never received as much money as it ever has from City Council here in Edmonton. Similarly, we've also put record investment into crisis diversion because I see a lot of these small scale, like, well, there's somebody in the alleyway, they have a sleeping bag, but they're not really hurting anybody, but I don't like them behind my garage door. What do we do? Like, that's not a job for patrol. That is a job where, can we get a van over there and get somebody and get them to a shelter or get them to services or something like that? Like, I tend to be more on the side of that. Like, police should be kind of more on the rapid, like the rapid response for danger and the investigation of criminality side. I think if there's other things like, doing traffic or certain things, I think we can talk about where we can do that through automation or through automated enforcement, where we can do that through other tools. I don't think people handing out parking tickets needs to be police. I don't think that once, if you bring someone to the hospital, you should have to be sitting with them all night. I think that the hospital and the healthcare system should have a receiving option where they take people from there and then put the patrol car back on the street.
Hmm.
I think when you look at, like, a question I like to look at is, okay, so how many priority 1 and 2 calls, like how many person in danger calls come into the police? And when I look at your time on a shift, if you're on for 12 hours, how much of your time are you spending with priority 1 and 2 calls? And if you're not, what are you doing? And what is
Yeah.
it that maybe somebody else can do to help you? Like, why is an uniformed armed police officer with a gun coming to my house to collect a statement from my wife about a fraud? That seems like a waste of time. Like, we need to make sure that, like, the police are there for when they're truly critically needed and not tied up on all this other crap.
So essentially back to having the right tool at the right time, right?
Exactly.
And being cost effective while doing it.
Yeah, well, and I'm not saying it's going to be AI, but, like, can we have, like, lawyers have paralegals, doctors have assistant doctors, nurses have assistant nurses. Like, there's, I don't need, yeah, it's right tool, right time, right place.
Yeah. And to some of the points that you're bringing up there, I've said this multiple times that, like, when police are called, it's because adults can't handle whatever's happening. So we're essentially the last line of defense for whatever it is. But we have gotten sucked into, like, going to just everything. Like, people call 911 for everything. and it's like, okay,
Yeah.
so can we divert those things? As far as I understand, because I've never worked in our dispatch, they do try to do that as much as possible. There are other options, but the odd calls still kind of filter through, and we end up getting sent to some things where you're like, that's not a police matter. Like, you can't get along with your neighbor. I don't know, be adults
Oh, yeah.
and learn how to talk to one another. Right?
Dude, they call my office sometimes. Like, can you talk to my neighbor? Because they put up a fence and I don't like the fence and I want them to. I'm like, why are you calling your city councilor? Go knock on their door. Like, part of this is a systemic societal, like, maturity that we need to deal with. But there's also, you know, we spend 500 million a year roughly on policing as a city. We are spending 5 million a year on crisis diversion. So people say, "Oh, I called crisis diversion and they never came, so I called the police." And it's like, well, yeah, because we have 6, 8 vans out there doing crisis diversion with triple the number of homeless people since 2019. Yet, how many patrol cars do we have out there? How many fire trucks do we have out there? Like, it's. I think there's police often say to me, "We're the only 24/7, 365 service," as if that's a point of pride. To me, that's oh man, we failed as a society. Are you serious? There's nobody else who can help you out.
Mhm.
Like, this is something we need to look at. So, I mean, policing is ultimately expensive, as we talked about with at the onset there. I think across Canada, the police is the number one item in every single city budget. There's been a 50% increase over inflation, on top of inflation, in the cost of policing over 20 years. In Edmonton, you get your tax bill, 20% of your tax bill right away goes to the police.
Mhm.
So if we're serious about controlling costs, like, I think there's an element here, and we can talk about sort of what is the role of politicians in the police system. But I think it's about looking at the city budget and looking at the police just like we do any other city department, like making sure, okay, well, where is the money going? How much overtime do you have? Making sure that before we cut a check as a city, we have to be responsible for the taxpayer, right? We have to ask those questions, because if not, we just see cost overruns and inefficiency and everything else, whether it's the police, the fire department, the transit department, the healthcare system. These are all the things that we need to look at.
I think that might be a small, quick fix. But for safety, when it comes to things like that, I think it's, if we want to look long term at fixing a bigger problem, and this might be hard in, like, political cycles because we're doing elections every so often, but looking at things like the education right from the beginning, how are kids being taught? What are they being taught? Health. Are we giving people the right advice? Are we directing them to the right resources? Right from the beginning, I think there's other systems that come before the security and the safety side. And not to blame them, I think this is a lot of different, there's more than one issue in play here, but I think a lot of things kind of precede the policing side of it. So we could look at the budget and say, okay, I don't need officers doing A or B 100%. They, maybe there's some people we could redirect and put them back in patrol or doing some different job. But there's a lot of other people that have to pick up the slack before the budget, I think, in general, overall, would actually be able to go down. Does that make sense, I guess?
100%. But let's say across Canada, like if police budgets have gone up 50% over inflation over 20 years, what if they only went up 25%?
Hmm.
And then that delta, all that extra money, went into something like one-on-one mentorship for kids who are high school dropouts, or one-on-one mentorships for kids who have been sexually abused, or one-on-one mentorships for like there's things that when we look at predictive analytics and who is most likely to end up in crime and violent crime, we know it's men. We know it's men under 40. We know that like those are the folks we got to look to the most. And I wanted to do a callback to, you did an episode with Dr. Irvin Waller.
Mhm.
Like, I think he's really onto something. I think there's a lot that we can do to help out young people, especially young men, and end violent crime across society before they ever get onto your dashboard.
So, but do you think like maybe the reason that the budgets are now inflated and there's so much over on the one side is because either the money that was given to those other systems to begin with either wasn't spent properly or was put into things that didn't work, and then maybe people didn't change? Like, I don't know if this is, maybe I'm kind of arguing what came first. So it's like maybe we could have done something better at the beginning.
It appears to be, even though crime has been going down across society, and especially the most violent crime compared to other eras, like in the 80s, it's across jurisdictions. It's more it's more tied to politicians' electoral cycles, that everybody wants to be tough on crime. Everybody wants to say that they're gonna address that, and then their answer is just give more money, give more money.
Mm.
Like, everybody is obsessed with more money, but not actually, are we spending smarter? Are we spending better? What should we be spending on? And I think that's it's the same thing with fixed healthcare. We never talk about prevention. We always say, like, we look at emergency room wait times. Like, that's the key metric.
Yeah.
No, be dealing with that long before people ever end up in emerge. I mean, if we're just dealing, like I said earlier, we have more people who die are killed by automobiles in our city than are killed by murder, right? Like, we need to look at that. But it's where we have limited resources, we have limited time. Where are we shining our proverbial flashlight? Like, what most needs doing, and how do we do that? So, is there a role for police? Absolutely. Is there a role for doctors? Absolutely. Is there a role for firefighters? Absolutely. But it's a question of where to, how much, when, etc.
And I'm not sure if I don't want to give the impression that like we have a certain amount of pie and it never grows, but I'm wondering, every year more people move in the city, we have a larger tax base. So is it a matter of we literally are not growing the pie like that we're all taking from? Or is it the pie is growing, but so now we're just trying to decide, out of that growth, are we giving more to the other side rather than law enforcement? Like, I guess this kind of came up in the budgets. Like,
Yeah.
hey, we said we're going to give you 10 or we're going to give you 5 now. So we're still giving you more, but we're not as big a piece as before, whatever it was.
Well, I think I've got a couple examples there. One, when marijuana was legalized, the chiefs of the day came and said, "Oh, we need extra money for marijuana legalization. It's going to cost all this extra money." And so council gave them more money. Sure enough, within 5 years, there was like 0 instances related to marijuana legalization. And council said, "Okay, can we have the money back?" And they said, "No." So, like, I think the biggest problem here is that the police budget is a black box. To use the pie analogy, the police chiefs have a box. The police commission have a box. They tell me there's pie in the box. I don't know how much pie is in the box. I don't know if the pie is sliced or not, if it's apple, cherry, or blueberry. There's not a lot of information. One of my colleagues asked, could we have just a copy? Like, what audits is the police commission doing of the service? For those listeners not in Canada, we have these police commissions, which are civilian appointed bodies that are supposed to oversee the chief and the service. But they're also quite limited in their powers and their abilities. City council asked, "Can we see a copy of the audit and the audit plan, not even the audit?" And the commission said no. It's very challenging. It's been an ongoing complaint of a lot of my colleagues and police and politicians all over the place around where's the money going. Like I can't tell you how much the uh, uh, I had to. So and when I did ask, okay, well, like I had to send in and we had to pass a motion asking different information. It took 6 months for them to tell me how many communications people they had and how many contracts they had doing public relations work.
Hmm.
Like 6 months. That's not okay. Like I, as a city councillor, am asked to give the police a guaranteed increase, a funding formula for multiple years, which is the largest driver of the tax increase. But I have very little information on what's included in that. Sure, they'll say, "Oh, it's not your job; it's the commission's job." Well, I think taxpayers expect much more than that. They want to know that me, as a city councillor, have asked, how much is going towards travel, how much is going towards overtime. I think I looked at, I had asked a couple of questions around, should we be spending on this or that, et cetera. And the I found it incredibly frustrating to get information. So I don't think that serves anybody. I think it just fuels cynicism and skepticism. And I think if the police were transparent with this is what we're doing, this is what we're spending money on, this is justifications for those costs. I think they could bring people around with them, and it'd be a lot easier for somebody like me to support a budget change if that was the case. But absent information, I wouldn't accept this from the fire department. I wouldn't accept this from anyone else. So it's
Mhm.
there's lots of these examples where, yeah, the police commission kind of tells city council, buzz out, it's not your business, even though we are the elected officials, and I don't care the the letter of the law may say there's a moral obligation or there's a political reality that commissions are under greater scrutiny, that they can't just say trust us. There's an expectation that they will be trusted, but it will be verified.
Do you see anywhere that they're doing things in an ideal way though? Is there any city that you know of through your contacts or, just experience that you have who are doing things in a way that you would approve of or say that, okay, this should be the model?
Well, I want to give a shout out to Edmonton Police if this if they are doing this paralegal program, which I can't remember the name of. If they are doing that, I think that will result in less busy work for members and more police time for members. I think that's really important, and I think something like that could help bend the curve in terms of more results for more safety.
But I'm talking about like when you talk about the relationship between the council and the police and the commission. Is there like any city that you know of that has something good going right now, or maybe it's just purely personalities? I don't know.
No, I think it's structurally set up to be dysfunctional. I think the police chiefs have incredible amount of latitude to do whatever they want under the Police Act. They have very little like structural supervision by commission compared to like other entities, and then they have autonomy under the Police Act to do certain things as well. And I mean, City Council does appoint people to the Police Act, and you can say, well, just appoint different people then. But the provincial government also just introduced it that they're appointing people to the Police Act too. So it's I think it's we're running an outdated operating system. I think there's a lot more. The money's way higher now. The public scrutiny is way higher now. I think people are. I think the taxpayer is expecting a lot more. Like I hear this from business groups as well too. Like show me, but we're paying much more tax for policing. Show me where the police are. Why aren't they coming to my district or my area? So it's yeah, it's challenging.
Yeah. I think we're just about at the end of our time here. We blasted through a lot of stuff. So we're just coming up on the hour. At the end of it, I'd like to give you opportunity to just talk about some of the things that you got coming up. So any major projects, any news that you can share, the floor is yours.
Yeah. So in Edmonton, one of the big challenges that I've been pushing for is we need a fair deal. We're the capital city of our province, but we're not receiving a fair deal from our provincial government in a number of different domains. Edmonton is a receiving hub for basically all of the northern half of our province for healthcare, for prisons, for a whole bunch of different things. We have more institutions here, and more people are discharged into basically out of prison onto the street here in Edmonton than other places. Even Bowden Institution, which is 184 kilometers away from Edmonton, closer to Red Deer, closer to Calgary. guess what? If somebody gets out of Bowden, guess where they go?
Yeah.
Edmonton. So that doesn't work. That's not fair. That's not fair that because Nathan is an Edmonton taxpayer, he's having to pay his city property taxes plus an extra percentage to fill the gap for what the province hasn't been doing. Why is Edmonton like we're if we are to be the service hub for Northern Alberta, if our police are going to be more burdened because of all the crime from the region, from Northern Alberta, from the rest of the province, we should be receiving more as Edmontonians. So ultimately, to me, this is not a question of should we be doing the work or not. It's who should be paying for the work. And right now, I don't think the answer is the Edmonton taxpayers should just be paying more because they live, on this side of the Henday rather than that side of the Henday. And that's not okay. So for me, it's really fighting for a fair deal for our city. I think Edmontonians are we're paying more and getting less, and that's not okay. And I think we actually just had this report from the city financial, like the tax department, called the Fiscal Gap Report, where they look through all these different cost drivers, why things cost more in Edmonton and why taxes are higher in Edmonton. And a lot of it comes back to not being treated fairly by the provincial government, whether it's as I mentioned, we have more provincial and federal penitentiaries that are dropping off more folks. And we know that within a couple of years, I think it's 66% get recaptured back into the system. So like, why is that? Why is that we have a justice system and a prison system where people are being released with no skills, no change, no nothing, back into poverty, back onto the streets? What do we think is going to happen?
Yeah.
Like it's very disillusioning. We have a healthcare system where people come here, they need a surgery in Edmonton. They're poor, they can't get home again. They're left in Edmonton. We have since 2019, the number of homeless people in Edmonton has tripled. It's over 4,000 now, and we don't have the supports available for those folks. So these are major structural concerns. It won't matter who's city councillor, won't matter who's mayor, won't matter who's chief. The gang suppression team is going to be dealing with the same stuff because we haven't changed the conditions here, and that's a big problem. So everybody's got a role to play. Everyone has a role to play. The city, the police, the fire department, everyone.
You know what? I don't know if I mentioned this to you when you were on the ride along. It might have been after, but just real quickly, I ran into two people out on the street that we were dealing with, and one was from El Salvador, and the other was from, I want to say, actual South America, maybe Central America, but they're both from somewhere down that region. And they came here to work, and then they said they got hurt, and then they've just stayed here. I was like, so this isn't even like Canadians in here. We have people from all over that are here now, and healthcare and all the other things, right? So it's like we have a lot of people in this city.
Well, and it's only going to get more and more. We know that like our provincial government has said we're going to grow to, I think, 40 million people. Was that their estimate? Like they want Alberta to be a major population hub, and they've been running this Alberta is Calling campaign and getting folks out to Alberta. And there is a bit of this more people, more problems element that and more people, more opportunity. I mean, I don't want to be down about this whole thing. It's still, I can't think of any other city I'd rather live in than Edmonton. We're still so much safer. We're still so much more affordable. I was in Montreal this summer. I talked to city councillors across the country. Everyone is dealing with this stuff. There's poverty everywhere. There's opioids everywhere. There's hardship everywhere. We've all had affordable housing cut since the 90s. We've all seen rent increases. We've all, we stopped building housing despite a population boom in Canada. And there's so many things that we need to reverse. And we see the enormous gap growing between the ultra, ultra rich and the poor. And I think there's a lot of stuff that we need to deal with there. So all this to say, this is why I love being a city councillor, Nathan. Every day is something different. One day you're learning about trees and Dutch elm disease. The next day you're doing a ride. The next day you're learning about like automated enforcement and photo radar. The next day you're learning about sewage pipes and, capacity for flood water. And it's an incredible role. And if any of your listeners are ever interested in running for city council wherever they live, I would encourage them to reach out to me. And, I'd love to talk more.
Very cool. And I'll do my part on this end by trying to educate people on just some of the safety and security issues and talk about policing, right? Because I think it is healthy and can help if we're opening the door a little bit more and just showing people what's going on and in their own backyard. So do what we can. Last thing, where can people find you and your work?
Yeah, you can find me and my writings at michaeljanz.ca. You can follow me on social media and Insta or whatever, Michael Janz. And yeah, if you need to reach out to me or find my phone number, it's on edmonton.ca.
Great. I'll remind everybody, follow, like, and share what you can. Also on the Quiet Professional side, give us a share, and this will be out here in about a week and a half. So not too long after we have this chat. So thank you for being on the show, Councillor.
Absolutely. Thanks for the help.